So if you're a consultant, coach, or entrepreneur, or you've got some kind of service-based business, you need to learn how to use LinkedIn properly, not just to boost your personal brand, but of course, how to generate leads. And on my next guest today, Sarah Santacroce is an expert on LinkedIn. And so we're doing a kind of a masterclass episode today. Sarah is going to be talking all about how to use LinkedIn to generate business, how to use LinkedIn to boost your personal profile. She's personally coached and mentored over 1,800 coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And she helps them to position themselves as experts on LinkedIn, shows them how to find and express their unique voice and stand out as thought leaders. In addition to her LinkedIn expertise, Sarah's also known for helping fellow introverts build a platform and be visible and sell their services. So if you're an introvert, you want to pay attention to that. So using their introverted strengths so they can grow their business. And finally, it's no coincidence her business is called Simplicity. She's known for her simple, no-nonsense Swiss efficiency mixed with a good dose of Californian yes we can attitude. So welcome to Sarah Santacroce. Let's have a listen. This is the Expat Business Hero podcast, and I'm your host, Alex Congdon. Hi, Sarah. Welcome. Lovely to have you on the show.
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much for having me.
So we're going to be talking lots of fun things around LinkedIn and online personal presence and all of that. But before we get into all of that, I'd just love to hear just a little bit about your story. How did you get started with this business and more importantly, why?
Okay. Well, since you have an expat podcast, with the audience being expats, maybe I'll start there because I'm not an expat in Switzerland. I'm actually Swiss, born and raised. But I was an expat when we moved to California, and that's when I started my business. So my husband got a job transfer, how that usually happens, right? And so I had to quit my job here. I used to work at IMD, International Management Business School, and moved over there. The kids were still small. So, California is a great place to have small kids, right? You're always outside. But after about a year, I'm like, okay, well, I've seen the stay-at-home kind of job. Let's see what I can do now. And so that's when I decided to build a location-independent business. I really wanted to have something that I can take with me. So because we were not planning on staying in California. We actually had talked about moving to Singapore, how it is. And in the end, we moved back to Switzerland, but I still wanted something that I can take with me. And so that's how I got into all of this. In the beginning, it was just social media in general, so not focused only on LinkedIn. And it was a great time to do that because it was in the middle of the social media boom in California. So it was in 2006 till 2010. And so it's a great time to be there and just kind of learn how to use social media for my own business. And that's when I thought, if I can do that for my own business, having no budget, then I can also do that for other businesses. And so that's how I got into the whole social media stuff.
And then, this whole idea of portable or location-independent business is a huge topic, specifically for people who are international, traveling around. It's the ultimate business to have, I guess. So has it come out the way you thought it would in that sense?
Yes and no. So first of all, it wasn't a big topic back when I started in 2006. People were still, it was still rather new, especially in Switzerland. Nobody had any clue what I was doing. So it was still rather the beginning of that. Has it turned out the way I wanted? Yes, in the sense that I can work with people from all over the world and that I get to spend, we bought a house in Sicily, which was kind of like a compromise to California. We can't go back to California. So we're like, well, we like the climate. So we have a house in Sicily and I get to spend quite a few weeks there. But we have kids and they have to go to school. So no, I'm not your typical digital nomad because, I have a family and that comes with certain obligations. Yeah,
of course. Now, there's another side to you as well, which I found fascinating being from the same community, and that is this idea of working with introverts. Mm-hmm. You tell us about that. So how did that start and why?
Yeah. always knew that I was an introvert. I think in Europe, it's not as stigmatized as maybe in the US. But then when Susan Cain's book came out called Quiet, that's when the big kind of movement started about introverts, right? And so people in the US were kind of more aware of the introvert extrovert thing. And I always got this question about LinkedIn. People ask me, well, why did you decide LinkedIn? Why not Facebook or Instagram or Twitter? And I really didn't really know the answer until one day I realized that it's actually the platform that most fits the introverted energy. Because it's business related, I don't have to share my personal life. I don't have to pretend to be so interesting and having such a happening life, which kind of you have to if you want to be successful on Facebook. At least in my view, that's how you had to behave on Facebook. And in LinkedIn, it's just no small talk. We're there for business. It's all very clear. It's all very kind of, organized. And that's what I liked about LinkedIn. And so I decided, well, I'll bring that into my branding. So now I have my own podcast for introverts. And it really served. First, I had them separately. So I was like, oh, I'm going to kind of hide the introvert side and do that on the side. But now this year I brought it together. So it's just me, Sarah, the introvert, helping people with LinkedIn. I'm also developing some programs just for introverts in terms of how to do business and online business and all of that. So that's how that comes together.
That's amazing. I never thought that was the way you would think of LinkedIn as being the actual perfect platform for introverts. It's amazing. I just never thought of it like that.
Yeah, it is funny. And when I ask other people who are, on LinkedIn and now obviously I seem to attract the same kind of people, introverts, and then I asked them, so what is it that you like about LinkedIn? And usually they don't say I like this about LinkedIn, but they always say I hate Facebook because you have to always, talk about your kids or talk about what you did. So I'm like, okay. So that's how, I started realizing that.
So as you were setting up the business, as you were, again, coming from California, moving over back to Switzerland, did you come through any particular struggles or difficulties?
Huge, yeah, because Switzerland is like 10 years behind on the social media scene. So when I came back in 2010, people were still kind of in the learning phase. They're like, social media, what is that? What is it for? They were on Facebook for personal reasons, but no business was actually using it. LinkedIn was the only platform where I got more interest. So that's another reason why I decided, okay, I'll focus on that platform, because in the B2B market, which is mainly my audience, that's where I saw some interest. They were getting it that, this is a business professional social platform. And so they saw interest in that. I had to completely shift the focus of my business. I wanted to do strategy. I came here, they're like, we don't need strategy. We need to know how this works. And so I had to kind of change into training. And so that's what I did in the early years. It's just basically training companies and entrepreneurs how to actually use, in the beginning it was still all the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. So major shift.
And you were doing this all on your own? Must have been, again, one of the things about entrepreneurs, it's very lonely sometimes, but did you get any help along the way?
Early on, I developed a virtual team. I was following mentors and other people in the US mainly, and they always said you need to start with a team right away, even if that means just an hour or two per week or even per month. So I always worked with virtual assistants right away. That doesn't mean that they were making the decisions. They were just implementing and executing. So the whole decision making and creativity, that was still all me, and it still is to today. I mean, I have my team, but they're waiting for me to give them instructions.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. And it's. I mean, I'm starting to build a team as well now and getting people around me to support me. But you still need as well, I suppose, other people that can give input to your business in terms of helping you come up with best practices or new ideas.
Yeah, masterminds are really helpful for that. There are a few here in Europe, but it's mainly also in the US that there's just much more options available than there are here. I think there are quite a few in the UK actually, now that I think of it as well.
So let's dive into LinkedIn then. And
Mm-hmm.
I found a couple of interesting facts before we go on. First is that LinkedIn has about 500 million users today. So it's not the biggest. I mean, it's not as big as Facebook. So in that sense, why is it so special? Is it because of its very focused audience, very niched?
Why is it so special? You mean why do I recommend it to business owners?
I mean, yeah. Why is it the if you like the network of choice for business, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's because it's very focused, and there's not everybody who decides to spend time on LinkedIn. Where Facebook, yes, you know, most people are on Facebook, but does it actually mean that you are gonna convert the time you spend on Facebook into business? Some people are very successful, but most of these businesses that are successful, they're somehow in the, you know, they might be product based, or they might be event based, or they're usually not just business services, right? Like a consultant is not going to do very well on Facebook. And so these are kind of like the small products, or, you know, even services, but it's always kind of this yeah, don't know how to describe it, but it's just a different kind of audience on Facebook than you would have on LinkedIn. So the typical LinkedIn user, you know, the age already makes a difference. Like, you're not typically on LinkedIn before you finished school or university. So you're on LinkedIn because you are looking for a job, you are employed, so you're a decision maker in a corporate, or you're a business owner, or, you know, some kind of board of directors. So in terms of that, already it's very focused. The other thing, the statistics that we have show that the average income of a LinkedIn user is obviously much higher than the average income of a user on Facebook or, you know, Instagram. There's a lot more happening, of course, on Instagram, and a lot more engagement. But in the end, do these people really have the money to invest in your services? They'll have $100. So if you're selling a product that is $100, yeah, you'll get a lot of traction on there. But if we're talking $10,000, you know, $20,000 mandates or contracts, then you're not going to be very successful on Instagram.
And they're not probably in that state of mind when they're on those networks versus
exactly.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's the other thing. The people on LinkedIn, they're there for one reason, and that's business. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we've got these two sides that I wanted to talk about. One is, and potentially other points as well. And one is personal branding, and the other side is generating leads for your business. So maybe we start with personal branding, and so just take us through what are the aspects that we should be aware of when we're trying to brand ourselves effectively on LinkedIn.
I think the first step is awareness, as always, is to actually realize that people do check you out on your LinkedIn profile, whether they go directly on LinkedIn, so they're actually typing in your name on LinkedIn, or they've heard about you and then they go to Google, they type in your name into Google. All the roads lead back to your LinkedIn profile. Because on Google, unless you have a very common name that there's like 100 people with the same name, usually your name or your LinkedIn profile shows up in the first page of search results, because LinkedIn is very well indexed on Google.
So it's, of course, someone's now going to go and search LinkedIn for Sarah Santacroce, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So
what are they going to find?
What are they going to find? Yeah. So it's really your first impression. Sometimes, depending on what kind of a website you have, if you're not very strong with SEO, your website might not even show up in the first page of search results, but your LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn does the SEO job for you. So it's really powerful, the LinkedIn profile. And so it really matters what people see there. And oftentimes, since we're talking to are we mainly talking to entrepreneurs, Alex, or do you also?
I think so. I mean, I think the people listening are a mixture of people in corporate who are aspiring to to make that shift into entrepreneurship. Or those already have those have taken the plunge, or their partners, and
right.
So it's a mixture of corporate and entrepreneurs, I guess.
Yeah, because it's actually a very, very different thing, right? Whether you're using LinkedIn in a corporate situation where you're basically representing your career, right? Your main goal, if you're in a corporate, is to have a LinkedIn profile that represents your career, so that if you need to find a new job, well, recruiters find you, or people in your network can refer you. So your main goal as a corporate person is to represent your career on LinkedIn. Well, if you're an entrepreneur, nobody cares so much about what you did in the past anymore. So it's not your career that you're representing, but it is your business, what you're actually doing, what you're helping people with today, that is much more important. And that's where I see a lot of new entrepreneurs, especially, making that huge mistake. First of all, lacking the awareness that LinkedIn is actually a business tool and that their LinkedIn profile should be a sales page. And then having a LinkedIn profile, so they have the awareness, but they just don't know what to do with it. And then their LinkedIn profile still looks like a corporate resume instead of being this sales tool.
So let's say I'm an entrepreneur, a coach, consultant, some sort of service-based business, as you mentioned before. What should I be thinking about then in my profile? Given that I want to make it into, quotes, a sales page for my business, what do I need to be putting in there?
So your profile needs to talk to your audience, first of all. So have a look at your profile and think, is this really speaking directly to my audience? Or am I still using kind of these, this format and layout? And often you will recognize it with telegraphic style, like these telegraphic phrases that just talk about achievements. And there's a lot of numbers in there. And I did this and I achieved that. And your clients, that's not what it's really impressing them. What you want to use instead is a storytelling technique and really tell your story and talk about what it is you do today. So that's the second thing. Talk to your audience. And the second thing is talk about the present. Okay. And that's a big shift for people who come from the corporate, because up till now, they're like, well, my career is what brought me here. And so they talk a lot about all the previous achievements, and nobody cares anymore at this point,
Yeah, I did this in the past, therefore I deserve your attention.
Yes.
It's not quite like that with entrepreneurs.
No. You can have one paragraph that talks about your background, and there it's really important to kind of bring in, how what you did in the past serves you today as an entrepreneur. So you can create that bridge, because yes, if somebody worked, 10 years at Coca-Cola as a brand manager, well, yes, that's impressive, but it's not enough to just say that. So tell me how that now helps me as your client, that experience that you had. So
okay, recapping then, we need to talk with our potential clients. We need to think about what they might be interested in. Are we talking about the kind of problems that we're solving, the solutions that we're giving? Is this how we do it? Is that how we make the story come alive?
Yeah, basically we tell them what we do. We tell them who we work with. Very important. And that's kind of scary also for new entrepreneurs, because they're like, well, I hear this all the time. Well, I could be working with anybody. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't help your ideal client. He would think, well, that's not a good fit for me if this guy just works with anybody. So be very specific about your target audience and tell the story in your LinkedIn profile who it is you work with, so people recognize themselves when they come to your LinkedIn profile. They're like, oh, okay, he gets me. He's been where I've been, or he knows my market, and so they feel more inclined to contact you, because they feel like, oh, he's talking to me directly.
I mean, I think that's a problem not just on LinkedIn, but with entrepreneurs in general, that they are afraid to
Yeah.
specific and niche down. They think they're missing business, and in actual fact, it's the opposite, isn't it? You actually will attract people who are specifically resonating with your image, with
Right.
your message.
Yeah.
So, what about then? So, we're telling a story. We're talking about in our profile who we're working with, what we do, a little bit of credentials as well at the bottom. You said, what about imagery? Is there a place for, what about photos and so forth? How important is that as part of your profile?
Yeah, I would say it's less important, but it does make, it's kind of the final touches. So you can now use media, so images, you can add audios, you can add videos. And that's where I use the term, I often compare the LinkedIn profile to a mini website. So it's kind of like a mini website that has the goal to lead people to your maxi website, to your regular website. Because the idea is not that people just come to your LinkedIn profile and then leave again. You want to lead them somewhere else. So very important to also include the link to your website, because you got their interest. Well, lead them somewhere else. Lead them to your website or a download or a video or something. So yeah, visuals are definitely a plus. It's good to adapt them to the rest of your branding, so that if they come over to your website, they recognize the same brand. You've used the same colors, and they come over and they're like, oh, okay, so I get a good idea of this brand.
So you mentioned something that was very interesting before, and that was this idea of leading them away, offering them something, taking them over to your website. So now I think we're starting to get into the idea of, how do we generate business? How do we generate leads for our business?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the mindset you need to have when you're creating your LinkedIn profile then, or maybe ask it a different way. If you want to use LinkedIn to generate leads for your business, what do we need to be thinking about?
Mm-hmm. Well, the LinkedIn profile is the starting point, because that's what you're going to use on LinkedIn to build relationships or generate leads. Okay. And so all the roads will always come back to your LinkedIn profile. And that's another thing that I realized that serves me well as an introvert, is that my LinkedIn profile is my sales team. You see, people come to my LinkedIn profile, it's all there. I don't have to do the selling. I don't have to send out messages. Hi, I'm a LinkedIn specialist, blah, blah, blah. No, they all see it already on my LinkedIn profile. You don't have that on any other network. If you connect with someone on Facebook, well, they see your Facebook profile, but there's nothing there, right? Where on LinkedIn, that's your sales tool, that's your sales team. And so the first step is definitely the LinkedIn profile, so that this profile does the selling for you. Then the next step, obviously, yes, you can bring people back to your website, but that's not the big chunk of how you're going to generate these leads. What comes into play is then actually building a targeted network of potential clients, where you engage with these prospects that then in the future turn into clients. And you do that basically by using the power of the LinkedIn database, just like recruiters are using the LinkedIn database to find ideal candidates. Well, you're going to be using it to find ideal clients. So LinkedIn is a really powerful database where you can go put in your keywords and then find these profiles according to your criteria, and then engage these people and add them to your network, and then engage further from there, so that eventually they will turn into prospects and leads.
So I've got to get you there on one thing there. There's one specific step, which I guess a lot of people, not just introverts, but in general, will be wondering, and that is engage. Okay. So I find these potential, I'm using the search tool of LinkedIn. I'm finding potential clients, prospects. What do you mean by engage? Just invite them to join, to connect with you?
That's the first step. But what's really important is that you don't just send out the kind of the random invitation that everybody does, where it says,
one.
the default one, where you just say, hey, I'd like to add you to my LinkedIn network, because then the other person will go, well, so what? I don't know you. I'm just going to put delete or ignore. So what's important is to build already that first step of the relationship in that first invitation. And that's where, can I mention the freebie that I have for your
Yes,
audience?
absolutely.
It fits in well here. So I have these LinkedIn templates, invitation templates that I'm using for myself. I'm using with my clients, and they're basically the messages that I'm using to send out to connect with people. And that's the first step of the relationship, is finding something on their profile that you have in common with them, and then use that message and saying, hey, I see that we have this and this contact in common. Would you be open to connect with me? And so that's the first step of an engagement, because then these people, first of all, there's only about, I've measured this for many years, and there's only about 3% of people that actually do that step, that actually customize the invitations.
Only 3%.
Really, it's just ridiculous how many people don't know about it, and it's not their fault. It's just like they're just they're using it like Facebook or Twitter or any other platform, and so very few people actually take the time to customize this invitation. And so you stand out already by sending them a customized invitation, and then that often leads into a conversation, because they get this nice message and then they might reply back, and that's where the ball is in your court again, and then you engage with them. Of course, what you should not do is send out a pitch after they connected with you. That's the worst thing you could do, is like, okay, now I have the connections and now I'm going to pitch them. So don't do that.
There was one etiquette I think that I've always followed, but I think I need to open my mind a bit more. And that was that a lot of people do this. They don't connect with people on LinkedIn unless they know them, unless they've met them before. And a lot of people teach that as well. That, oh no, I don't. For me, LinkedIn is just a place to connect electronically after I've met them somehow in the real world.
Yeah, that's very true. Especially in Switzerland. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's what I bumped against a lot, because it's very traditional. And so they're like, well, I've never shaken your hand, so I'm not going to connect. Luckily, that's changing a lot now. There's still some, kind of the older generation. They're like, no, I'm keeping my network basically as my Rolodex, which is, in a way, it's like, well, what's the point then? If you're on LinkedIn for business, then shouldn't you be, reaching out to people who you've never met? Because that's what you do if you go to a networking event. It's not like you're going to tell somebody you meet at a networking event, oh, sorry, we've never met, so I'd rather not talk to you. Essentially, that's, to me, what people are doing on LinkedIn. If they're telling me, I've never met you, let's not connect. I understand where they're coming from, because LinkedIn initially, that's what it was, right? This kind of private club, if you will. Right. But if you really want business from LinkedIn, that's not the way to do it.
So you're reaching out, you're engaging with these people who you don't necessarily know. You're using personalized invitations, which I guess dramatically increase the chances of them caring or even opening or connecting with you. And then you're saying it's a bit like, I don't know what the analogy is. Maybe it's like dating or something, but you just can't, you need to just curate that relationship, don't you? You need to converse with them and not go in for any sale, as it were.
Yeah. So it's a lot to me about content, because what you also need to do is really make sure that they see you as an expert in your field. They're never, that nowadays people are much smarter than they used to be before. So they do their research. So they're going to analyze your LinkedIn profile if they're even slightly interested in what you have to offer, right? And they're going to also see what other content they can find. So they'll look at your website. And so now that they're in your web network, what you need to do is make sure that you start positioning yourself as the expert that you claim to be. And you do that with a content strategy. So you have to be visible in your LinkedIn network on a regular basis with content that demonstrates that you are the expert that you're claiming to be. So that's
does that extend to publishing things on LinkedIn? Because I think that's a side of LinkedIn that again, a lot of people don't know much about.
Yeah, it's all about publishing content on LinkedIn. So whether that is in long form articles, so with the LinkedIn publishing platform, or just text updates, share content to your LinkedIn network that show that you have an expertise, and that every time they see your content go by, they go, Sarah, the LinkedIn specialist, Alex, expat podcast. So that's your job then to build that up.
I mean, a lot of people think that, and again, I'm just going through what people have in their mind is this association with LinkedIn is just being for job seekers and corporate folks. But you've got this whole other world, and entrepreneurs, service-based businesses using it to grow their businesses. So have you got any interesting anecdotes or stories of people you've worked with, entrepreneurs who are growing their businesses, how it's helped them? I mean, have you seen them being able to get clients as a result of having a great approach?
Yeah, for sure. We can talk about Melita, who was on your podcast recently. So I think at the time she was still a copywriter. She's now transitioned into business coaching. So working on her LinkedIn profile, making sure that she shows up for the keywords that she wants to focus on. Again, at the time, I think it was copywriting. That generated over $60,000 for her in I think it was over a year or so. So definitely, I mean, and that's just one story that I thought of because we both know Melita. So yeah, there's definitely huge opportunities, and again, it depends on your target audience. So LinkedIn is great for coaches, consultants, entrepreneurs, but depending what kind of business. So it's usually really interesting if your average client revenue is like over $3,000. So if you're looking for like these small kind of clients where it's like $100 or one-on-ones, just hourly based, it's just not worth investing all that time on developing this network and creating content and all of that. But if you're working with contracts or mandates or copywriting, where it's like, okay, I'll create all the content for your website, you're talking $10,000. Well, then it's definitely worth spending that time on the platform.
So do you have any, I mean, you've seen a lot of profiles then in your time. I mean, do you have any horror stories or funny stories about clients coming to you with, really bad profiles that you have to turn around? I mean, you don't have to name them, of course, but what kind of things have you seen that maybe?
They usually don't come to me, but I just laugh about the profiles that I see online. It's usually, a lot of times it's the wrong picture. So the picture obviously does matter because people make themselves an opinion about who you are on LinkedIn. The other thing that I'm kind of allergic about is the third person in the LinkedIn profile.
Yes.
I think that's very 80s. In the 80s, we used to use the third person even on our websites, but nobody does that anymore unless you're, I don't know, Obama or Trump, I guess. But
so you're
use
saying
the
we should write
person.
I this, I
Yes.
am. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Wow.
It just, why? Because it comes over as, you come over as very unapproachable. It's like, oh, this is my perfect LinkedIn profile, but then nobody ever feels like getting in touch with you because it kind of comes off as standoffish almost.
Absolutely. That's so we've got the and I think someone, I read another stat, and I mean, you mentioned that photos are important, perhaps not as important as the rest of the profile, but I read a stat somewhere saying that having a photo, just having one, it makes you multiple times more likely to receive a message than not have one. I suppose there
Right.
are still people out there with no photos on their profiles, which is
Yeah.
funny to
And
think.
sorry,
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that the profile photo is essential.
Okay,
so
that's
yeah,
what we.
I thought you meant just other kind of photos underneath the profile, and so yeah, you could just get off LinkedIn if you don't have a profile picture, because imagine you want to create relationships with people who you don't know, and you're going to connect with them and there's no picture of you. How does that come off? I mean, I would never trust an invitation from someone if there's no picture, because people nowadays, they do business with people. And so you're basically a robot if you don't have a picture, or you have something to hide. So yeah, you definitely need a profile picture.
Now, as LinkedIn's grown and it's starting to follow what the other platforms like Facebook are doing, and that is to offer paid advertising as well. So you occasionally see these sponsored ads that suddenly arrive in your inbox, or you see sponsored ads around the platform. How effective are those, and are they? Is it worthwhile doing those in combination with your more proactive sort of lead generation strategy that you mentioned before?
Mm-hmm. I work mostly with entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, and for those, I almost never recommend paid LinkedIn ads. If you compare LinkedIn ads, the cost of a LinkedIn ad versus a Facebook ad, a LinkedIn ad costs you $5, a Facebook ad costs you 20 cents.
Yeah.
So for each click, you're going to be paying $5 on LinkedIn. So unless you have this giant marketing budget that you can play with, it's just very hard to even just test these out. I mean, I've tried myself, and I went bankrupt. No, I'm just like, it's just very hard.
Yeah. So it's probably not. So if we talk about the market we're talking with, so small entrepreneur service-based businesses, it just doesn't seem as appropriate. It's
unless you're promoting a specific event where there's an immediate ticket sale after, then you can give it a try. But if you're just trying to build a list and build leads, I think it's not worth it. I've done it before where it goes to an immediate sale after, and obviously it has to do a lot with the landing page and the content and everything. But if you can sell something immediately after, then it might be worth it. But otherwise, yeah, not.
Okay.
Almost not.
So if we step back then, and you had to give general advice to people about their LinkedIn profile, the sort of top 3 things that you could say that you should look at now to make sure that it's right, what would you say?
Mm-hmm. Well, I tend to almost forget about the LinkedIn profile picture because to me it's just so obvious, but it is definitely key real estate. So make sure that it's a professional profile picture, that it's not just cut out from your wedding picture, that has a neutral background. Use some common sense. It also needs to be aligned with your audience. So if you're a web designer, don't use a picture with you in a suit and tie. It doesn't connect, right? So all of that goes into play. So the LinkedIn profile picture, the headline, so the title, headline is super important as well. And what you want to do there is make sure that, first of all, you use all the characters you have available, 120 characters, and you use a keyword that people are actually searching for. So, for example, you might be a business coach. Well, use that word, use that keyword. Don't get too creative, because people they use the words that they know. So don't think about what you want to call yourself, but think about what other people are searching for. And then talk about your audience, tell them who you work with, and tell them about the results that you promise. So that all of that needs to go in the headline, and you have 120 characters. So picture, headline, and then the summary section that we talked about earlier talks about the present, talks to your audience, and uses your keywords.
So I just want to pick up on one thing, and that's the headline, because we didn't talk about it that much. You see, a lot of what I find and what I see is a lot of people who are transitioning out of corporate, let's say, life and becoming entrepreneurs. They struggle letting go of the old labels, the hierarchical positional labels.
Right. Yeah.
Director of this, head of that, which don't mean anything when you're running a business trying to sell XYZ services.
Yeah.
So, and that's difficult, isn't it, for them to let go of that, because they still feel that they need to represent a career label as their title.
Yes. And it's I think, yeah, you're right. It's partly that. And I didn't make that connection. But it's also kind of linked in, because until probably last year or so, they still called that section title instead of headline. So they changed to headline only rather recently, where so everybody was thinking, oh, headline, I guess that's what's on my business card, right? And so they would put founder of blah blah blah, director at blah blah blah. Who cares? Every company has a founder or a director, and then nobody knows the name of your company, so definitely don't use that. But again, use a keyword of something that your audience is searching for. Tell them about who your audience is and what the outcome is.
Wow. Okay. So thank you. A lot of really useful tips there. I'm going to mention your the invitation templates in a second, which everyone can get a hold of. So what about for you personally, looking ahead? What are you planning with the business? What does the future hold in store for you? What are your goals, I guess, in the short term?
In the short term, in the next 6 months, as I mentioned, I think in the intro, what I want to build is more courses or training and coaching for introverts. So to really bring the LinkedIn together with the introversion, I'll bring in my 10 years of online business experience. So it's going to be partly kind of, confidence coaching for introverts, but also systems, because I see that's what that's really what I bring to the table. So whether that is how to set up a webinar, how to set up a podcast, how to do email marketing and funnels. So all these systems that really make sure that my business is almost automated. That's, I think, what introverts are struggling with.
Fantastic. So let's talk about these invitation templates that you'd like everyone to have a look at. You've got a website. I can read out the website. So it's www.sarasantacroce.com/Alex. And there you've got, I think you've mentioned, got 6 invitation templates that work, that get accepted every time.
Yes. Yeah. So those are the messages that I use in my business that I recommend to my clients. So those are the ones that you're going to use in the message that you send out, rather than using the default, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Great. Okay. And I'll put that link down in the show notes as well on the site, so that everyone can find that. But fantastic. Well, listen, Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on board. It really has. You've got some really very specific, very helpful advice that I hope everyone's going to follow now. And of course, they can also reach out to you and get your help. And I recommend them to take these invitation templates, because I'm certainly going to start using them more often. And yeah, thank you very much. And I hope we can do this again. We've obviously got a lot more things that we can talk about, but thank you very much for coming on and having a chat.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.